Okay, welcome everyone. So this is the Jupyter Frontends March 5th, 2025 meeting. We have 9 people in the call, and first one on the list is Andrew, who is sharing his screen at the moment. You can go ahead, Andrew, now.
Thank you very much. Hey, everyone. You might remember that I used Jupyter Frontends call previously to discuss pinning JupyterLab in Jupyter collaboration. And it was merged and already released for the main branch. And I wanted to do the same for the V2 and V3 branches. As a part of that work, I updated the V3 branch, right? So a bunch of PRs were already backported to it. And I have opened the PRs to pin the JupyterLab version in the Jupyter collaboration package in 3.x. And not in that package because into the text there were not yet a package split based on the repo structure. So here I was adding it on the topmost level, right? So I was looking for reviews for this, for feedback. Essentially, backport to 3.x, it adjusts pin version to essentially be 4.3, right? From 4.3 to 4.4, excluding 4.4. So it's just 4.3 and minor versions. And for V2 branch, I pinned it from 4 to 4.3, not including 4.3. But so for reasoning like why this particular version, I found that 4.3b2 bumps Jupyter YDoc version, and that 4.4 introduces content provider, right? Which 3.x collaboration doesn't use a content provider. So 4.4 excluding makes sense as a upmost version. But does like 4.2 excluding makes sense here as the lowmost version? And is the range for 2.x correct here? I can't necessarily find a good way to like check, this compatibility. So looking for any reviews or inputs. In particular, for example, how introduction, like is this pin, does this pin make sense to contributors? Yeah, essentially looking any advice or feedback here. Well, I can hear that there is no like real-time feedback, at least it seems so. So folks, if you would want to give those a look and leave some comments, I would appreciate that, or reviews. That's it.
Okay, I guess we can have a look at the PRs. And that would mean also making a new release, right? Of what is it, version 3, right?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So that would mean after merging that PR, that would mean making a new release as well, right? Afterwards.
For V3, yes, I would say so. And also there were already some PRs merged into it. So even without that one merged, potentially release is possible. But me personally, I of course would like to merge that one, right? So these are the PRs that were already backported, and as far as I can say, were not released. It's 3.x branch.
Okay.
So there are already some changes that were not released. Of course, me personally, I would love to merge that pin too before releasing the next version.
But I guess it makes sense to have that upper bound, right, on the 4.4 because the Jupyter collaboration version 4 will require JupyterLab 4.4, right, as a lower bound requirement.
So yes, but it is just like, I mean, we added that bound, right? And based on the addition of the contents and API in the Jupyter collaboration, and
Yes.
right. So yeah. Um, mm, 1 second, please. Um, here it is. Yeah. So, but this does make sense, right? Because we're adding the contents API.
Yeah, I think so, yes. Mm.
So if this makes sense, then upper bound for 3.x branch being 4.4 also makes sense. I would love if someone could give a look to the lower bound as well, right? I identified it as 4.3. Yeah. I'll be honest, it's not trivial. That's why I'm looking for more feedback.
Okay, yeah, thanks for looking into this. Okay, anyone wants to comment on this? Okay. So the next one on the agenda, so I have a few items. The first one is about the ongoing SSC nomination. So yeah, as a reminder, we have like every year approximately uh, a nomination and a vote for electing the representative for the Software Steering Council for each sub-project within Jupyter. And I sent an email to the council members a couple of weeks ago to nominate someone or nominate yourself if you would like to. If you would like to, and we still have a couple of days for like this nomination period. But if people want more time to think about it, I think it will also be fine to extend it by a week or so. But yeah, I'm going to send another email as a reminder soon, just so that people have access to the form as well. And the nominations are anonymous, of course. So yeah. So that's the first item, and the other one I had was about some work that is a follow-up to the this service manager PR merged that we're starting to consume downstream in Jupyter Lite. And there were a couple of things that came up after looking into this a bit more closely. And the first one is this this thing called config section within the JupyterLab services package that uses the Jupyter server config API endpoint to create a config section on the server. And when I looked a little bit more into this, it was not really working the same way as other service manager services. So I opened a PR in JupyterLab to make it look a little bit more like the other service manager plugins, so that it can be available as a plugin itself. And then other extensions can require a token to be able to create config sections on the server. instead of the current way of using a global and then calling a method from an exported namespace. So when I looked a bit into this, a bit more, like it doesn't seem like many extensions make use of this. So my thinking was that we could go like move forward with this, still keep the previous API, and deprecate it so that we encourage extensions to use the plugin instead. In the case of JupyterLab, that would be much better, because otherwise there is really no way to kind of replace the default namespace. But with a plugin, it's much easier because we can provide a different implementation. So there is a question in the chat: what are config sessions? Yeah, I wasn't sure about that also, like until recently, but it's an API. It's a /API/config on the Jupyter server, and it leaves I think it's called a server config file somewhere in the Jupyter directory, and you can put data in there, a little bit like the settings, but at the Jupyter server level. Yeah. We use it in one place in JupyterLab. It's for the fetch news pop-up that shows up on the first use, on the first page load, to be able to store whether we have seen that pop-up already once. I think that's the only place. Yeah. And there's another extension, JupyterLab Tour, that uses it also for, I think, the same reasons. But I don't know if it's a very used API. So that's why I'm proposing this.
There's some other misuses of it out there for API tokens and things like that, which are probably not even appropriate, but they're out there and people are shipping them. So there were some questions about deprecation in there. So right now, we've got the @deprecated TS doc tag JS doc thing, whatever. That's a whole other story. I think there's some challenges with that, right? Because like, who cares if you say it's going to be deprecated, but then you don't do anything about it, and there's no end user observable thing of it, and then you bump over to the next patch release, because I guess we break stuff on patches release these days, and then it breaks, and the traceback is down in minified JS and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, like, and also when we say that we're deprecating, yeah, when are we going to deprecate?
But it is deprecated, but the question is, when is it going to be removed? You mean?
Yes. And I don't know if there's a specific way in typedoc or tsdoc rather to do that, but we got stuff in tradelets and IPython on Jupyter server that says it may be removed in the future, and then it's not removed ever. And then it finally is removed, and it was never communicated to anybody downstream that it was going to be deprecated, and then stuff breaks. So I don't know if there's conventions we can adopt that say, like, this is deprecated on the next X. It's the next major revision or the next minor revision. You should never be able to say you're going to deprecate it on a patch release, because that totally obviates the definition of patch release. And then it should not build if you leave in something that you claim is going to be deprecated on a timeline. But I don't have any good answers for how to solve those things.
So I guess this deprecation, the question about what we do with deprecated APIs is also maybe a bit different than this config section, right? Well, it's related in a way, but we have like many APIs that have been deprecated now in JupyterLab, and it's true that apart from the deprecated decorator we leave in top strings, then there isn't really anything. But I'm not sure if it's for like users of JupyterLab or more for extension authors. Of course, the users will be hit by that
right
at some point. That's for sure. But
now, I mean, if there was a feature flag, which we've talked about in a number of occasions here, where the application could run with you do a very early upfront sniff of page config or something like that, and have a strict deprecation. Deprecations are errors, but that would introduce, again, another couple levels of complexity, unless there's a simple way to do it. And I hate decorators in TypeScript because they don't work right. And it never actually got ratified in ECMAScript, so they're off doing their own thing. But that's the kind of thing where I would see this actually, being relevant. Like, okay, we added this inside that config section .create. We're going to decorate it with don't run this under strict deprecations. And then you've got a way that, people can try stuff out. So if that's running on your binder in page config, or if that's running in your test suite, where you are not going to use deprecated functions, and if your upstreams or sibling extensions use deprecated functions, break fast. But it's pretty hard to do. I mean, we don't have a general feature flag system set up for it, and you would not want to special case this specifically.
Yeah, and as
and
to when, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, and just the last tip. What was your thoughts on the icky of injecting the service manager into the deprecated config manager or config section.create? So if config section had a way to set a private service manager once, right? And so your service manager is on the hook for setting that, and then we would not have to rewrite that in other places. That it would continue to work. It would work with the new pluggable, because right now you would get what happens if you hit create. You're going to get the default thing.
Yeah.
So it'll use the default fetch and all that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I guess that could also work. Yeah, it's like more like a workaround. But I guess
that would be
theory,
less breaking, I guess. I mean, I still haven't. We got the one example of the custom. Do we have any other examples, hot examples, other than JupyterLab doing this yet? Probably not. There probably isn't anything out there.
No, and also the reasoning was that since I only found like one instance of this in the lab code base, and in JupyterLab tour. In JupyterLab tour, we can it's really easy to update it, right? To use the new API. So I wasn't sure if it was worth doing more than this, if there were just very few uses of that config section API. But maybe it's used in many more places that we don't see, like on GitHub. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the search string anymore, and there's a lot, shows up with forks and all that stuff. But I found about 20. So there was something related to Dask. We don't like breaking things for Dask. There was some AI nonsense that was storing their tokens in there, which, whatever. I mean, whatever. And then there was somebody that had like some dashboard configuration they put in. That seemed pretty cool. That seemed like a smart, thing. Because the nice thing about, the config sections are validated by tradelets, I believe. I think that the config manager, when it does the set and the get, actually runs it through tradelets. So that's actually really cool. And it's a cool feature. I just don't, unless it's really not a cool feature and there's things that we think that are private on the server if you are not running Jupyter server in the same place as your kernels, so that you would not a priori have access to that data, like environment variables or whatever that trickle down into your config. So maybe that's really bad, because if you can ask for server config or my magic API config to get at something that you shouldn't be able to access, then I don't know. I have not looked into it. You probably try on like the GitLab. Yeah, the GitLab one that has secrets on the server. So if that, although maybe they're not config section. Yeah, I just don't remember how it works. I don't. It's a weird API.
Yeah, to me, it's also unclear why the config session is like implemented this way and not like a it's part of the service manager, because the service manager has so many more things like ND convert, like settings and so on. It's like it almost maps to the what Jupyter server provides, but I don't know why this one was left out, like as a global. Yeah. So that's a mystery. Oh, wait, never mind for now, I guess. But yeah, if you say that there are other extensions that maybe it could be worth looking into a way so that the functionality will still work, even if there's use the deprecated API for a bit. Yeah. I don't know if it's just 20, maybe it's fine to avoid an issue in 20 repos to tell them that they should update. Okay, thanks for the discussion. I also had another PR link there that I left as a draft for now because I'm not sure if it's worth pursuing, but it's kind of similar to the previous discussions. Like when looking into making Jupyter Lite more streamlined with like the way the JupyterLab plugins work. So having everything on the same plugin registry. So it means that we can implement our own kernel and the session managers. But at some point we hit the problem that so there are 4 classes in JupyterLab services that make direct calls to the REST API of Jupyter Server for managing kernels and sessions. So it's the kernel manager, the session manager, kernel connection, and session connection. But if we were able to swap this for something else in Jupyter Lite, we could just reuse the implementation from JupyterLab directly, still mocking the WebSocket like we do currently. But at least we will be able to reuse a lot of the code that is in these classes, especially in the kernel connection one. It's like it's doing a lot of things, especially with like messaging and comms and so on. And for that to work, so I open a PR it's more of a proof of concept for now, to allow for providing a different kernel API client and also a different session API client. So that would mean that if you want to talk to a different session and kernel API, then you could provide your implementation of this and pass it to the kernel manager and the session manager. In the case of Jupyter Lite, that would mean just implementing a few lines of code instead of re-implementing the whole server and connection classes. Yeah. So I was wondering if we should continue looking more into this. It's part of the services package. It's one of the kind of critical packages, I could say, because it's also used outside of JupyterLab in other integration of Jupyter. So it's always a little bit like we should always look several times at the changes that go in this JupyterLab services package, because it's very stable and used. So I wanted to see if people had opinion about that. In the long run, in the case of I think in the case of Lite, it would make sense to drop the mock socket altogether and re-implement everything, but it's a bit of work. So yeah, that's why this path could have been an option, like at least for now. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's it for me. Happy to discuss here on the issue on the PR. If no one has any comment, we can move on to the next person in the agenda. That's Mike.
So just a short one from me this time. I've opened the draft PR to add a user-facing changelog for JupyterLab 4.4, and you can see here. A link in the chat. The result more to be written, and I left two sections empty. One is for code console improvements. Jeremy, I don't know if you want to write this one, or if not, I can come back to that later. For kernel subshells, I'm actually right now trying to fix the JEP repository, because the JEP for subshells was approved and merged, but it was never added to the registry of JEPs. And probably there are other JEPs which were omitted. So I will come back to this one once we have a place to link to, which is outside of GitHub, because we of course have pull requests where we could link to, and then it's matter to adding a couple of screenshots. But mostly what I'm interested in is if folks think there is anything I've forgotten about. I've tried to follow the checklist that Jeremy created, and we're updating as we went in the issue, but there might be other things that are worth mentioning for users. So if you see that something is missing, please add a review comment. And if any of the text doesn't make sense, please suggest changes as well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for working on this. Okay, it looks like we don't have anyone else on the agenda. Like, does anyone want to say something on the record, or wants to talk about something else? Give it a few seconds.
I could quickly make a little bit of off-topic request because it's Jupyter Server PR, but it's just a documentation, mostly PR. My teammate is looking for reviews. He went to the Jupyter Server call last week, but no one was able to come around, I think, just since last week, and give it another look or merge it. Right, to merge it, one would need write permissions on the Jupyter server on the Jupyter server org. So yeah, a little bit of topic. If you review, I see that Mike says he doesn't have rights. That's fair. If anyone on the call does have rights and has capacity and is looking for a PR to review, this one is a good candidate. Thank you very much. Oh, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, so then let's stop the recording.